interceptions and coming back down from 27 to nothing. It was really impressive. So really speaks to the mental toughness of that team. So I was happy to see them get that win.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. 4 interceptions, 3 in the first quarter. The Jaguars were able to come back. And Eric, I actually went to bed at halftime of that. You know, the Chargers were up 27-0. It's like there's no reason watching the second half. And I really, really wish that I ended up doing that. And San Fran also covered in that game. So, all right, let's get into this week's games. First, let's take a look at some of the lines and how they have shifted throughout the week. So, looking at that Buffalo line, it continues to move up. It's now up to minus 13.5. That point spread is the largest in wild card history since 2017. All right, Baltimore, Cincy, that line moving up as well. As we know, Ravens having some issues at quarterback. And then the Giants, Minnesota line staying pretty relatively consistent, minus 3 Minnesota throughout the week, and then slightly moving up on that total. And then Dallas, Tampa Bay. Dallas opened as a 3-point favorite. It's now down to minus 2.5. We'll be talking all things about that game tomorrow. But I want to get into this Giants-Vikings game, which is why we're going to bring in Sal Pal to talk more about this game. And Sal, the Giants lost to this team in the same stadium 3 weeks ago. They lost by 3 points. How much time was spent this week on cleaning up mistakes for the Giants?
A lot of time. You know, that's the first thing that Daniel Jones said to me last night in the team hotel. Well, we've got to take care of the football. They had 2 turnovers here on Christmas Eve. They had 7 penalties. Still only lost on a buzzer beater from half court, as Wink Martindale called it, that last-minute field goal, walk-off field goal, 61-yarder. So they feel like if they clean up some mistakes in this game, they could still move the ball against Ed Donatel and Mike Pettine's defense here of the Minnesota Vikings. They play that, you know, cover 2 deep safety, zone defense, and the Giants move the ball quite a bit. Daniel Jones had over 300 yards passing, and the Giants had over 400 yards of total offense. But I have a question for you. You went to bed at halftime of the Jags Chargers. Where is your confidence in Doug Peterson?
I know.
Wait a second.
Look,
Hold on.
and I'm a Philly fan.
What?
You know that.
What? That's why I'm asking you this question.
I know. The reason
you had
being,
no
honestly,
confidence that Doug Peterson.
Look, Sal, I was up at 3 a.m. in Vegas yesterday morning. We had a ton of shows, and I needed to get some sleep.
I got you.
And I'm out in Vegas.
I got you. I feel you. I got you. Okay, Erin.
I know. No excuses. You're not letting me off easy. I understand. I understand why.
No. No.
I know, I'm chuckling, so I'm going to have to follow that up with the question, Sal, but I'm going to do the best I can here. So, you got Justin Jefferson, you got T.J. Hockenson. They really torched this Giants team on Christmas Eve. They had like 3 touchdowns between them. So how confident are you that the Vikings can replicate that success today?
Well, one of the things that we looked at when we put together the matchup show is why was the Giants blitz so ineffective on Christmas Eve? And that's because, you know, Kirk Cousins takes a hit and keeps on coming. 1, 2, they have 2 of the best blitz beaters in Hockenson and Jefferson, best wide receiver in the National Football League. And you can't let them have free release off the line of scrimmage. And that's exactly what Wink Martindale and the Giants defense was doing here on Christmas Eve. And that can't happen in this game. Now, the Giants get Adoree Jackson back at corner. They get Xavier McKinney back at safety. But, you know, you look at the Vikings, they're getting Garrett Bradbury back at center. He didn't play here week 16. Here's their best offensive lineman. They've had so much flux on the offensive line. That's why Kirk Cousins has been getting hit a lot. But look at this number. This is a key number. So the Giants blitzed 27 times, only generated 18 pressures on Kirk Cousins. And with those 27 blitzes, Kirk Cousins turned it into 171 yards passing here on this field with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. So Kirk Cousins has built-in blitz beaters in Jefferson and Hockenson, and they believe that that will be the case in this game as well.
Interesting, Sal. I think this is definitely going to be a tight game. Excited to see this, and also excited to see your coverage of this game. Thanks for joining Bet this morning.
You got it.
All right, Eric, let's get into this game and make our picks. Minnesota currently laying 3 points. That total, one of the highest at 48. Are you looking at the side,
Yes.
the total, or do you have some player props for me? Or a combo?
Yeah, you know, I actually do have a combo in this game, and I'm really intrigued by this matchup and looking forward to it the most. So first off, I really like the Giants in this matchup. I know they're underdogs, so I'm backing the dogs in this game. And one thing about New York, I'm like, they're 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 road games. They should come into this game well rested, you know, after not playing many of their starters back in Week 18. And one thing about this matchup, a lot of people look at the Vikings secondary saying, well, hey, they give up the second most passing yards per game in the league. Throw the ball, which I do believe the Giants will throw the ball. But you got to think about this, Aaron. They've gotten to this point because of Daniel Jones and because of Saquon Barkley, with really leaning heavily on the running game and Daniel Jones converting third downs, helping to move the chains when he can. And I don't really see them deviating away from that strategy, but I think it really comes down to the trenches in this game. And it's really between the Giants defensive front and the Vikings offensive line, because over the last 7 games, the Giants, their defensive front ranks 4th in pass rush win rate. But then when you look at the Vikings with their offensive line over that time frame, they rank 24th. And so I really like the Giants in this matchup. I think Saquon Barkley has a monster game, and he helps will this team along with Daniel Jones to a victory. If you're looking at player props, though, I really like Richie James in this matchup to surpass 49.5 receiving yards. One thing about James, he's passed that number 3 times over the last 4 weeks. And he's got a great matchup against the Vikings slot cornerbacks, so that's a matchup I see Daniel Jones and the Giants exploiting. Last but not least, let's talk about TJ Hawkinson, who has a really great matchup against this Giants team that's really struggled in pass coverage off and on throughout the season, but they've been very susceptible to tight ends. And one thing about defending Justin Jefferson, and what I've noticed a lot of teams doing here recently, is kind of keeping their safeties back to not give up the vertical passing game or a deep pass. And because of that, it's really opening up things underneath, which I think benefits someone like Hawkinson, in this matchup. If you look from weeks 14 through 17, he's actually surpassed the betting line in this game 3 out of his last 4 games from weeks 14 through 17. So I love Hawkinson, and those are the picks that I have for this game.
We are basically just, as Anita says, lock and step here. I agree with the Giants, taking them with the points. And I'm a little nervous because everybody on Daily Wager likes the Giants, now including you. So it's making me a little bit nervous. Joe made a joke before the show saying, we're all going to say the Giants +3, and then we're all going to go home and bet the Vikings since we're all on the same side. But I do like the Giants in this spot. It's good that we have a game to refer to, which is Christmas Eve, in which the Giants are able to cover the 4.5. But they did lose by 3 points. But keep in mind, the Minnesota Vikings needed 17 points in that fourth quarter in order to get the win. What makes me nervous here is the Minnesota Vikings, they're 11-0 in one-score games, which is an unbelievable stat. And maybe you could look at it the opposite way and say they're really good in this spot. But for me personally, I think that luck is going to run out, and I think the Giants are going to press them. If you look back to that game, Daniel Jones had one of his best passing games. Saquon Barkley was great in that game. He had 84 rushing yards. I do like, for what it's worth, Saquon Barkley to go over 73.5 rushing yards. I'm not taking it any higher, okay? It opened at 71.5. I talked about this throughout the week. I liked the over. I'm not going any higher than 73.5, but I do think the Giants are going to have to lean on the run game in this one. I also think the Giants defense will step up against this Minnesota offense. And if we look at the Vikings defense, this is the main concern that I have. They're 20th against the run. They're 31st against the pass. So that's just an area that the Giants are going to have to exploit today. And I do think it's going to be a tight game, and the Giants will get it done. And keep in mind, the Giants, against the spread this season, they were 13-4 ATS. They're really good at covering the number. So I do like them with the points in this playoff matchup. Again, I mentioned Saquon Barkley. I like him over rushing yards. And I'm also looking at Justin Jefferson over 7.5 receptions. And you have to hear me out on this one. He hasn't hit over this mark in 2 straight games, and he's only hit over this mark in 8 to 16 games this season. But he had 12 receptions against the Giants. Why was that? It was because the Vikings were playing down. They had to come back in that fourth quarter like I talked about. If you look at the previous game before that when they played the Colts, he also had 12 receptions. Why was that? Oh, it was because the Vikings were down and had to come back. I expect this to be a tight game. The Vikings could go down in the first half of this game and have to play from behind. And Justin Jefferson, obviously, as we know, Kirk Cousins' right hand. So I do think he will have over 7.5 receptions. Let's continue to go to other games. All right, we got the Ravens versus the Bengals. Man, this is just a tough spread to get behind. Right now we got the Bengals laying 8.5. This line opened 6.5. So if you're able to grab that at the beginning of the week, I'm kind of happy for you. I would have grabbed it at that number. And you got the total at 40.5. Do you think Joe Burrow and company can keep the streak going for how great they've been against the spread this season?
No, I do think they'll be able to keep the streak going, Aaron. So I do like the Bengals to cover the spread in this game. They've been perfect against the spread over their last 7 games. And you look at this Ravens team, so there's no Lamar Jackson, and even when he was there, they really were inconsistent week in and week out. And there's a lot of familiarity with these teams. One thing about Baltimore, in the last 4 games against the Bengals, they're 0-3-1 against the spread. But if you look at Cincinnati in their last 10 games against the Ravens, they're 6-3-1 against the spread. So I'm just leaning towards the Bengals in this matchup. I think they'll take care of business. It's the playoffs. One other bet I'm looking at, I really like Samaje Perine in this game. His rushing yards line is at 17.5 rushing yards. And so the spread suggests that the Bengals will be playing with the lead, lean heavily on the running game, and Ryan's been actively involved in this backfield once Joe Mixon returned from injury earlier in the season. So I like P. Ryan in this game over over rushing yards, and I do like the Bengals to cover the spread here.
I like it. I can't get behind the Bengals in terms of the 8.5, but I'm going to take them in the first half -6. That might seem a little jarring to people, but keep in mind they're really good in this spot. They're 5-0 against the spread in the first half in their last 5 games when playing at home. In their last 5 games overall, they're 4-1 against the spread. They've met the Bengals twice this season. In the first matchup at half, it was tied, but keep in mind Lamar Jackson was playing in that game. We just saw them play Week 18. They were up by 17 points in that game. Now, I think Tyler Huntley is a better quarterback than what we saw last week, but at the same time, I do expect the Bengals to jump out on this squad. We saw last week the first guy to have a touchdown on the board was Jamar Chase. I expect him to score a touchdown today. He's had at least 1 touchdown in 3 of the last 4 games. He has 9 touchdowns on the season, and we know that Joe Burrow loves Jamar Chase. I'm also looking at Chase over 6.5 receptions. So last week in Week 18, I'd given it out as one of my best bets, going Jamar Chase under receptions. But this time I have to go over. The reason being, he's had he's had at least 7 receptions in 8 straight games. That's the longest active streak right now in the NFL. Also, if you take him over 6.5 receptions, it's at plus money. So that's how I'd play it. I'm taking the Bengals in the first half, Jamar Chase touchdown, Jamar Chase over receptions. Let's continue on with some of the games on the board, and we're going to bring Jeff Darlington in to talk more on the Dolphins and the Bills. Jeff, as always, we got to talk about the weather with you because you get all the nice games, the nice weather, and now you're all cozied up, and we actually are kind of living for it here.
Yeah. Erin, I gotta be honest, there's a perception I only get warm weather games, but I've been in Kansas City, Buffalo. I mean, I need some sympathy here as well.
Yeah, look, I remember you at the Kansas City game. You were breathing and we could see your breath and all that, but at least you're at a game that's really fun because the Buffalo Bills atmosphere is pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, it is. It was very intense in the parking lot. In fact, actually related to the game, Mike McDaniel was basically telling his team, embrace it, enjoy it. Skylar Thompson said he was actually an inactive quarterback here. He remembers getting the snowballs thrown at them on the sideline. He said, if you don't embrace it, it's just going to run you over. So it is crazy here. And it was actually very fun in the parking lot as well. I smell like street meat.
I don't think that's a terrible thing, but I just want to ask you quickly, what are the Dolphins saying about their offensive game plan today?
Yeah, look, they understand that Skylar Thompson did enter this season as a third-string quarterback. He's not Tua Tagovailoa, but they also recognize that what they did last week against the Jets, not scoring a touchdown, is not going to work against the Bills. Thompson said, look, our game plan last week, as the game went on, we recognized we just needed to get the field goal, and as a result, they sort of shifted their game plan that way. Today, they know they have to be more aggressive. They're fully aware of that. They believe they're capable of it as well. So this is a team that is banged up right now on offense and defense. But if they're going to go up against, if they're going to go down, I should say, they better go down throwing the ball because that's the only way they have a chance against the Bills.
So on the other side, we got the Dolphins, who are going to have to slow down Josh Allen. So in his last 3 playoff games, he's thrown 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, and has rushed for 113 yards. So what is the game plan to stop any of that, Jeff?
On top of that, again, I mentioned the injuries that the Dolphins are facing. Their secondary is decimated. So really, from what I'm hearing, is that we're going to see a lot of zone defense out of the Dolphins. They recognize if they go man against Josh Allen and just try to get to him with a heavy blitz, that he's just going to shred them deep. So I do expect to see a lot of zone defense. They like their plan right now against the Bills in this game. That being said, I mean, we can talk about it all day, but until we see it on the field, this is obviously an enormously difficult task for the Dolphins today against the Bills.
Well, Jeff, I'm sure they like their plan, but I'm not sure how it's going to be executed. But thanks so much for joining Bet this morning, and try to stay warm.
Thank you, Erin.
All right, let's take a look at big favorites. 9-point home favorites in wild card round in the last 30 seasons. I mean, my goodness, 12-0 straight up. 12-0 against the spread. Average points per game, 33. We know Buffalo's sitting as a 13.5-point favorite. This line has moved around all week. It opened -9.5. I've seen it as low as -9. But of course, we were trying to figure out what was going on with the quarterback situation for the Miami Dolphins, and it was all over the map. So this line's been moving around a ton, but Buffalo laying 13.5. We're going to talk about that, give you some of our game picks. But first, we got to bring in Dianna Russini to talk more about the Bills, and it's so great to have her back on Bet. We're just going to have her in just 1 second. All right, good. We have her here. Let's go. All right, the Bills secondary does have a tall task shutting down Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Waddle himself had 216 receiving yards just against the Bills. What are the Bills saying about making sure these guys don't get burnt by them?
Yeah, hi, Erin. There doesn't seem to be a lot of concerns from this Bills secondary. They, of course, have tons of respect for what this Miami offense can do, but they know with Tua not out there as the starting quarterback, it's such a different type of offense. It's really the run game that they were focused on this past week and trying to clog up the center of the field, the middle of the field at least, to not only slow the run game, but those short routes that those receivers are going to run to try to run those slants. So in terms of the overall defensive approach for the Bills, their concern's really going to be slowing up that ground game, knowing that with their third-string quarterback here, they're not going to get too much action in the passing game.
Yeah, and this team has been riding an emotional high for a while now. So how much of a return to normal was it this week for the team?
Yeah, normal's a perfect way to put it, actually, because that's exactly what this has been this past week. Practice schedule, meetings, everything the Buffalo Bills do on the normal week is what they went back to doing after what we saw last week. Obviously, after Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field, everything following was a little out of sorts for them. So after that Patriots win, this team was mentally exhausted. I spoke with a lot of the players on Monday, and they said we feel relief because he's healthy, but the emotional sort of hangover from it all was exhausting. But that being said, the loose vibe around this team this past week looks and feels a lot like the Bills did just a few weeks ago. And for them, they all lean on their quarterback, Josh Allen, as a leader. And of course, out on the field where he has historically torched this Miami Dolphins defense.
Well, I'm glad, regardless of everything that happened, that they're finally on the upswing emotionally. But Dianna, thank you so much for joining Bet this morning. So happy to see you back on the sideline as well. Looking forward to your coverage.
Thanks, Erin.
All right, Eric, let's get into the game. Make our picks. We know the Bills, 13.5-point favorite. That total at 44. How you playing it?
Yeah, I'm actually leaning towards the Bills covering the spread. And I know that 13.5 points can be intimidating, but the Bills are 5-2 against the spread in the last 7 games, and they've won 7 straight games. So you got the Dolphins. They have a third-string quarterback, Skylar Thompson, that's there. And the Bills are highly motivated. First of all, they want to avenge their defeat by the Chiefs in the playoffs last year. And plus, they're playing for Damar Hamlin here, to win a title for him. So they got that emotional kind of motivation here, and I think they'll really lean into that. And so I'm leaning towards the Bills here to cover the spread. I also like James Cook over 37.5 rushing yards. So I know last week, he led the backfield in rushing attempts and also in receptions. And considering the spread, they expect the Bills to build up a big lead and play from behind, which I think bodes well for someone like James Cook. So I like him over rushing yards in this game, Erin.
Well, Eric, you mentioned that this line is intimidating, and that's exactly why I did it as my Erin on the side of caution today on SportsCenter as well as Daily Wager. It's not that I don't feel comfortable in the Bills. The Bills have the edge on offense. The Bills have the edge on defense, so the healthier team. The Dolphins have Skylar Thompson under center. Of course, it seems like this is a lock, but anytime something feels way too easy, I've been in this industry way too long to know that there's no such thing as a lock, okay? It's just the Bills are the better team by a long shot. I'm just not touching the spread. On top of that, the Dolphins, they covered both meetings this season, going 1-1 straight up. Keep in mind, Tua was under center for both of those games. And of course, Josh Allen and company had to play from behind in those games. But I'm just going to stay away from the spread altogether and look at player props. The one that I really like is Josh Allen over 33.5 passing attempts. If you look at the 2 regular season meetings, he threw the ball 64 times in that Week 3 loss. He threw the ball 40 times in that Week 15 win. Now, I don't think he needs to throw that many times in this game in order to get the win, but I still think he'll throw over 33.5 times. He has so many options that he can throw to. You got Devin Singletary, Isaiah McKenzie, Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, and on top of that, Miami's defense ranks 27th in opponent passing yards per game, and not to mention Miami's opponents throw 37 times per game, which is the second highest mark in the league. So I'm going to go Josh Allen over 33.5 passing attempts, and a little tease here. That might be one of my best bets of the day. All right, Eric, you chill out for a minute because we're going to bring in somebody else, a special guest that's also in Vegas with me, but he's going to be from a different camera here. All right, Tyler Fulghum, bringing you in to give your take on some of these games. We just talked about the Miami-Buffalo game. How are you playing this one?
I like Buffalo. I know it's laying a massive number, and I understand and appreciate you preaching or exercising caution with this particular game, but we just saw another instance of this yesterday in Santa Clara. Over the last 30 years, Erin, in the wild card round, home favorites of 9 or more points are now 12-0 against the spread, and of course that means they're 12-0 straight up. So there's a reason why teams that host a wild card game and are laying big numbers are doing so. The market knows there is a massive difference in the 49ers and the Seahawks, and now today the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. We know how good the Bills are. They're one of the Super Bowl favorites. But Miami not only dealing with the injury issues at quarterback, no Tua, and Teddy Bridgewater isn't healthy enough to be the starter. It's going to be rookie Skylar Thompson, but they're missing myriad starters. Raheem Mostert at running back, both offensive tackles, on defense as well, cornerbacks and D linemen. So this is just a terrible spot for Miami, a great spot for the Bills. I like them to win this game and cover and make that trend now 13-0 over the last 30 years in the wild card round.
I can't fault you, Tyler, and that was also Doug Kazarian's best bet on the show. He had talked about Miami being 1-2-3 Cancun and being over this game by halftime. But nonetheless, let's continue on with some of the games here. So Eric liked the Giants +3. I like the Giants +3. Are you going to take the G-Men +3, or are you going with the total? It's sitting right now at 48.
Yeah, I would lean Giants +3. I like the G-Men, but to kind of protect us from having just Giants across the board, I will default to the total and play it over 48. We saw this game literally 3 weeks ago in the exact same stadium. The total for that Week 16 matchup closed at 48.5, and we got to 51 because of the 61-yard field goal that broke a 24-all tie late in the fourth quarter by Greg Joseph. Despite the Giants losing that game, they had a couple of turnovers that ended possessions where they were moving the football efficiently. So there was, to me, some points left on the field. T.J. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson had massive games. We know the Minnesota defense is terrible, so Saquon Barkley and Danny Dimes had big games as well. I see a similar script playing out. It's a tight, high-scoring game. No matter which team wins, Erin, I think yet again we get over that total of 48 and have something that closes at 50+.
That makes a lot of sense considering the Vikings defense is just, it's absolutely mediocre. So I do expect a ton of points in that one. Let's continue on. We got the Ravens right now. They're an 8.5-point dog against the Cincinnati Bengals. We know the Bengals are really good at covering this spread. That total at 40.5. Side total player prop, what do you have for me?
Yeah, I was talking about that trend, 12-0, 9-point home favorites in the wild card round. Well, Cincinnati was at one point a 9-point favorite, but as Doug told us today on Daily Wager, Erin, some sharp money has moved Baltimore now to an 8.5-point favorite. So it doesn't quite fit that trend that we were talking about. Because of that, I'm going to respect that sharp money. I don't think the Ravens can win this game, so I'll just play the under. It correlates with liking the Ravens plus the points. I think Cincinnati wins, but I wonder if it's a little bit closer game. If Baltimore covers or pulls off the upset, there's no way, Erin, they're going to do it by winning in a shootout. That's just not going to happen. They don't have the horses on offense. But we know they have a great defense, and we know John Harbaugh can muck it up and maybe rely on Justin Tucker to kick some field goals to keep it closer win. So I think Cincinnati wins, but I think it's like a 20-10, 20-13 type of game that goes under the total of 40.5.
I like it. All right, one more game for you on the slate. This Monday Night Football matchup. We got Dallas versus Tampa Bay. Dallas, a 2.5-point favorite on the road with that total at 45.5. How are you playing this game?
I think the Bucs win this
Love
game.
it.
So
Love
just
it.
give me the Bucs on the money line here. Tom Brady at home with his team peaking relative, to what they had been. They may not be a great team, but this is definitely the healthiest they've been and the best football they're playing all season long. Consequently, on the other side, the Dallas Cowboys, you can't say the same. I think they were a much better team a month ago than they are right now. The defense has fallen off. They're not healthy. They've dealt with myriad injuries at cornerback and in the secondary outside of Trayvon Diggs, and that's not good against Tom Brady when he's got a healthy Chris Godwin, a healthy Mike Evans, a healthy Julio Jones, a healthy Russell Gage, and 2 healthy running backs that he will use time and time again in the passing game. So I don't know if I agree with our friend Doug that it's a low-scoring game. I think there's going to be so many pass attempts that this game goes over, but I think it's an exciting, high-scoring Tampa Bay Buccaneer win.
I'm so excited for this game and completely agree with you. I think Tampa Bay will win this game outright. And I'm probably going to do like a little Philly parlay, and that'll be Dak interception and Bucks money line. We got to just do it. It's just something, it's a rite of passage for anybody in the Philadelphia area. But all right, we bring back in Eric Moody. It's time to look at our Take It to the Bank. And guys, last week, it was really, really ugly. All right, none of us were able to get a winner on the board. Jamar Chase under, didn't hit. He went over. Dallas over 24.5. They went under. They scored 6 points. And then Tyler, Green Bay versus Detroit, they ended up losing. That was really, really tough for all of us all around. So let's get back on track this week. Tyler, start us off with your Take It to the Bank.
Yeah, my best bet on Daily Wager was laying the wood with the Buffalo Bills, and I encouraged that just a few moments ago. I'll play it another way as well and take their team total over 28.5. Not only is it a great matchup for Josh Allen against a banged-up Miami defense, but the Buffalo defense against Skylar Thompson, I'm guessing creates a turnover or two, maybe has a scoop and score or a pick six, but definitely sets up some short fields for Josh Allen and the Buffalo offense to work with. So I think this is a dominant three-phase game for the Buffalo Bills, meaning they score over 28.5, likely over 30 points, and a win.
All right, I like it. Eric, you're on the tee box. What do you like?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley here to surpass 73.5 rushing yards. And so the thing, I know a lot of people talk about the Minnesota Vikings secondary, but the reason that the Giants are here, playing in their first playoff game since 2011, trying to get their first win in the playoffs since that time frame, is because of Saquon Barkley. I'm like, it's no reason why he shouldn't have well over 20 or more rushing attempts in this game. So I like him quite a bit. So I'm going to take it to the bank for this week, Saquon Barkley over 73.5 rushing yards.
I like it. That was one of my best bets on SportsCenter this morning. Another one that I gave out on there as well as Daily Wager is my best bet is going to be Josh Allen over 33.5 passing attempts. I talked about this multiple times. I feel like I'm regurgitating everything I've said, but he threw the ball a ton against this team in the regular season, 63 times, 40 times. And as for Miami's defense, they allow opponents to throw 37 times per game, which is the second highest mark in the league, behind the Tennessee Titans. Now, we know Josh Allen. I mean, this guy, he has every weapon, it feels like, in the book to throw to, and I expect him to have a really good game through the air, considering Miami's defense is ranked 27th in opponent passing yards per game. Again, this is attempts, not completions. I always like taking these ones. So Josh Allen over 33.5 passing attempts for me. All right, guys. Well, that was a good Take It to the Bank segment. Hopefully we get some winners for you guys. But Tyler, thanks so much for joining Bet this morning. Hopefully you can go get some sleep.
Not much. I got to watch 3 football games that I hope are exciting. You guys have a great rest of the show.
Go take a nap. All right, Eric, let's get to our before we let you go. So you can talk anything you want. You can talk NBA. I know you're not going to be on Bet tomorrow. So you can talk Monday Night Football. Where are you going?
You know, I'm going to go with Monday Night Football here because I was smiling as you and Tyler were talking about the Buccaneers and the Cowboys because I really love Tom Brady in this game to surpass 272.5 passing yards against the Cowboys. You know, as Tyler mentioned, you were talking about as well, is that this is a Cowboys defense that has trended down for the past couple of weeks. They don't have positive momentum going into the playoffs after that debacle that they had, which we will not discuss. So one thing about Brady, I'm like, he has surpassed 272.5 passing yards in a high percentage of his games this year, leads the league in completions and pass attempts. And he has dominated the Cowboys in his career, 7-0 against the Cowboys. And you know what's really intriguing, Erin, is that he's actually averaged 277.8 passing yards per game in each of those games against Dallas. So I think Brady comes up big for this Buccaneers team on Monday night. So that's you know, another prop bet that I like quite a bit.
All I want for my last day in Vegas is, which is tomorrow, to see Tom Brady beat the Dallas Cowboys. God, do I hate the Cowboys on a different level. But nonetheless, quickly just want to talk about the NBA. I like the Lakers +3 against Philly. You guys know I'm a Philly fan, but this is a terrible spot for the Sixers. They're on a back-to-back. They just beat the Jazz by 1. Lauri Markkanen didn't even play in that game. Joel Embiid, James Harden played a ton of minutes. I know the Lakers aren't a great team, but they're playing at home. I want to take them with the points. There's no way that I'm laying it with the Sixers in this spot. And it just feels like one of those games in which the Sixers, they're on the road. They're not as good on the road as they are at home. I really like the number with the Lakers playing at home +3, so I'd have to take that. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining Bet this morning. He's Eric Moody. I'm Erin Dolan. We will be back here tomorrow to talk all things Monday Night Football. We got the Dallas Cowboys versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks again for joining, and have a great day.